Welcome to the Blue Collar Pastor podcast. I am Pastor Nick Staley from Ecclesia. I'm joined with Pastor Nathan. Pastor Justin's not with us today. He's got something else going on, but we have a special guest. We brought him all the way from India. No, we didn't. This is Gary Morris. That's right. This is Gary Morris. So I figured I'd let you introduce yourself. Just give him a little rundown.
Gary Morris, marketing guy, now business broker, extraordinaire by night, and
Excellent.
Nice.
And Nathan, what's our topic?
Our goal is to get in a little trouble tonight, so we decided.
To have Gary on.
Yes, exactly.
I get it.
If people just lean in like, oh, okay, who's this guy?
I have a special phone for these type of things. We need to cause some trouble. I'll be there. Where are you?
Right.
Don't you want to know what kind? No, just tell me where.
So if you're ever on social media, flipping through your phone, doesn't matter, TikTok, Facebook, whatever, I'm sure, like us, you constantly are seeing things about men, right? Whether it's toxic masculinity or it's or just the household or men and women relationships and that dynamic. And it just felt like constantly we're running into this idea of men are under attack, right? And so the title of our show is, let me title it.
Well, let me go back to that because I was just getting on my Wi-Fi here. Men under attack, how to go on the offensive. How to go on the offensive.
Thus, Gary.
And that's why I brought Gary, because he's perfect fit for it because he's a man.
There's three of us. Here we go.
That's right.
I know. We had to get a third man on here to be able to pull it off.
Right.
We got his triune, therefore there's got to be three guys now.
Well, at least we're not interviewing a woman for this.
That's true. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Although there are women you could interview for this doing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, have some good insight. Oh, yeah, or be men.
Bug in here. Sorry. See, it's just us having a conversation.
Yeah.
And so you know what we do too. This is not something we script. We are literally, you're basically entering into a conversation we're having. That's why Nathan said, hey, if it's offensive, it's offensive, because this is what we would talk about if your cameras weren't on us. So we're just going to talk amongst ourselves and you're going to be a fly on the wall. It's getting kind of cold for fly on the wall. So maybe like a squirrel on the wall. I don't know, a coyote in the woods. Yeah, something like that. So, all right. So to get us going, I guess let's just start with the simple question, like why or how are men under attack? Like how specifically do we see it in our culture, in our society, in our business, wherever it is? Like where are men under attack and how?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So how do we see it happening?
Yeah.
You guys want me to jump in here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think we could all, have our own 2 cents, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's conversation, so.
Yeah, I think, honestly, it's going to depend on who's asking. I think, and it depends, because there are men that are out there that are doing things with their life, that are busy attacking, that they're not worried about, they're not sitting around looking for how men are being attacked. They're actually on the offense. So they don't have time to worry about it. They're working on, their fitness, their finances, their relationships with their friends and family, and they've got all this stuff. So for those guys, I think that they're just attacking. They're on the attack. They're on the offense. They're not too worried about it. And so I would say the most probable answer is if it is under attack, it's probably under attack by other men, weak men.
Mm-hmm.
That, I heard a recent illustration actually today. I forget who said it, but there's a something in zoology where they talk about a fish that's called the sneaky effer. And this fish, basically, he can't, the fish, there's the small fish, the most pronounced male fish are the ones that get all the sexual relationships with the female fish. Mm-hmm. But there's a type of fish that begins to act like a female fish because the mating strategy lasts for about a second. So he begins to swim around and act like a female fish that he can swoop in there and hurry up and have a mating session. And so I think what you see a lot today is there's a lot of men that have acquiesced to the feminine world culture and began to be the stereotypical white horse, the white knight that's going to come in and save the day and try to defend all the women's rights and everything. And he's being the sneaky effer.
Mhm.
He's
Yeah.
trying to act like I'm here to save you, I'm here to help
Yeah.
you as his mating strategy because he can't compete. So I think the biggest challenge to masculinity, if you will, which isn't a challenge to the guys in the top 10% that are trying to have a better life for
Right.
their families. They're not really worried about it, but the ones that are, all the ones that the women are pointing at is like, listen to this guy because he's trying to save them. So
Yeah, listen to Joe Biden.
yeah.
He's one of those guys. though.
Yeah.
He really is. I mean,
Absolutely.
he's a
Yeah,
he's a
yeah,
creep,
yeah,
but
yeah.
at the end of the day, what's he doing? He's acting like a man, but protecting the women's rights.
Protect, yes.
And so all the women are flocking to
Absolutely.
him. It's
It's crazy because Sunday, it was actually her daughter. I sat down when I came to church early, and she's asking, I think she asked Dennis, and she asked me, she goes, are you this? And I can't remember the term she used, but she described that. She goes, it's the type of guy that mopes around and says, he goes to women and says, nobody wants me. I'm not attractive.
Yeah.
And the whole goal is just to get them to be attracted to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Like,
actually
it's
went
that
out.
sneaky, and I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not that.
I went out with a buddy recently, and we were at a bar hanging out, and first time I had been out with this friend in a long time. He's actually, I won't give away who he is. I mean, y'all don't know him, but
famous. Then. He's famous. obviously. He's some celebrity or something.
And, and I realized that I was with someone like that, and it was so infuriating because every girl that came up and tried to communicate and talk, and all of a sudden he became like, I remember there was this girl who came over and she was talking, then her boyfriend or friend that was with her came over, and they were chatting with us, and he said, "Are you taking care of her tonight? Like, are you going to make sure that she's safe and protected?" And he's like, "Sure, yeah." And he's like, I don't want to see you getting too intoxicated and taking her home." And she's going, "Oh, you're the nicest guy here. Thank you so much." And I realized, like, oh, how pathetic. But this happens in a much more subtle way everywhere.
And so I'm assuming the guy he was talking to didn't pick up on it.
Didn't know.
Like you are offending me right now.
Right.
But you're saying that I'm not
right.
Any
Like,
of this.
I need your advice.
Right.
And he's there going, I'm here to save the day from something she didn't even need saving from.
Yeah.
And so she was enjoying it because it was just extra attention.
Mm-hmm.
And as a caveat, often attention to women is what porn is to men. That's why social media is so popular, especially for women. Attention to women is what porn is to men. So women love attention. So they're
we actually have talked about this. One of our upcoming videos will actually be on the sins of women.
Yeah.
Because we always point on the sins of men.
Yeah.
And I think there's another point of it, like where in the church, like Mother's Day, what does Mother's Day sermon look like? How great are the moms? You do such a great job, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
What is men's? Men, you suck.
Right.
And you need to be better.
Exactly.
It's like it's constantly under attack.
Go into any restaurant on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Now flip that and go on Father's Day.
If we're outside cooking on the grill.
Right, exactly. Yeah. They're empty.
That's
Yeah. Not that we need it, but that's just,
no, but it shows kind of a cultural shift. Like,
absolutely.
we do love the women. Like, we love our wives. We love our daughters. Like, that is a manly thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's not. But love doesn't say, well, we forget all of your sins or we forget the struggles you have. Rather, the loving thing is to say, yes, you have them and acknowledge them and fight, and make the stand like you would with a man.
Yeah.
So it just needs to happen.
Yeah.
So do you think, like, perhaps what you just described would be the catalyst for everything we're seeing?
Yeah.
As far as like the core or the source of it all?
Yeah. I would say that weak men are probably what's destroying masculinity because I think by and large what happens is women have to become the men that they can't find.
Yep.
And so you'll see now in the world, like, especially as you enter the dating world, a lot of females are becoming more and more masculine, or they're creating characteristics that frame them in a way that traditionally wouldn't be a feminine, soft woman.
So I guess I'll take it back to like our age group. This would be more. We're seeing more like tomboys.
Absolutely.
Like if you want to look at that, like back when we were kids, a tomboy is kind of a rare thing.
Right.
You had the girl who might go out and play football with the guys periodically, but it was not common.
Right.
And now you're like you're saying it's common at a different level. It doesn't look the same as like 40-year-old women out playing football, but
promiscuous, addicted to porn,
Yeah.
multiple tattoos, colored hair.
wait, what's wrong with
that,
tattoos?
you know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with tattoos. I'm just saying, try to find a
Right.
woman without a tattoo.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And again, that I'm just talking about from traditional
Yeah,
feminine
right.
qualities, like, you know, it's totally different.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So what happens is weak men, you know, there's the vacuum, and so women have to become the men that they can't find. And so, if you ask any woman, what are you looking for in a guy? Like traditionally, like if you go across the board, typically they'll say, or what is a guy looking for a girl? They'll say things like he has to be independent, or she has to be independent. She has to be able to hold her own, be a good conversationalist, take care, you know, of, you know, her life and everything. And it's like, well, no, that's what you're looking for in a guy. Like, I don't care if a woman makes $100,000 or works at McDonald's. There are specific characteristics and qualities of a woman that a guy looks for that are different than what a girl looks for. But women think guys are looking for what they're looking for
Right.
because they can't find it. So
So do you think too? On that, run a question to you guys then on that end. Do you think some of those weak men are actually looking for like a mother figure? Because that's what it almost sounds like in my head. Like,
father figure.
well, right, yeah, a better way, yeah.
But in a woman,
a woman
yeah.
that's going to be like the father.
Yeah, and what happens is it destroys the sexual chemistry in a relationship. Completely oblivious, kills it because of the issue of hypergamy, where women typically date across or up. And if the person that they're dating is below them in terms of status, you lose sexual chemistry, right? So at that point, you know, all kinds of issues can come up.
Yeah.
And so,
Now that's culturally. Let's
Yeah.
shift this now. How about the church? Let's go specific to the church. How is masculinity being attacked in the church? Because we can see culture, and obviously culture permeates into the church. Unfortunately, it should be the church permeating the culture, but we've acquiesced that and allowed the culture to. I mean, how many sermons are out there? You see sermon series of, we're doing Marvel's Captain America sermon series or E.T. sermon series because we're always 40 years behind, you know.
Yeah.
But like
That'd be funny.
how specifically, like what are ways the church has been attacked for its masculinity?
I mean, what you just mentioned, I think, is just false masculinity.
Mhm.
It's like, let's do things that we think men want to do, like superhero shows
Mhm.
and, you know, and guy nights and all that. And it's just like, it's just so phony.
yeah,
You know, there's nothing that appeals to me at all about that.
yeah.
How about
It's
throw it another way too, and throw another question on top of that because you can go on that.
Mhm.
What about the aesthetics of a church too?
oh yeah,
Like
Yeah.
the idea, I mean, churches by and large do look pretty effeminate.
Yeah,
They
they do. Yeah,
and they
Yeah.
show that, and
Yeah.
like, I guess, how have we like allowed that to happen? Like my brain goes, like as men, we've just like we were
Yeah.
talking before, like in our homes, you know, our wives are like my wife's home all day. She works for she's a
Yeah.
full-time mom. I'm home all day too because I work from home. But you know,
Yeah.
so you know, the home is typically like she's decorating, she's
Sure.
cleaning, she's doing this stuff. So oftentimes the houses look more like the wife than the husband.
yeah,
And the same has happened in the church, and it makes me wonder, like, as the guys are busy working, the women have time. They're at the church. They're the ones decorating. We've just allowed it to happen and not said, hey, let's make it look tougher. Like,
yeah.
there's an appeal to that.
Well,
You know.
and I don't know if it's necessarily tougher, but there's an
Or
aesthetic. There's an
manly.
aesthetic component to, let's say, interior design.
Mhm.
You know, so what we were talking about before is a lot of times men are happy to have a man cave,
Mhm.
but that is so weak. Not to have a man cave, but to be content with, I got my little man cave I get to decorate. Meanwhile, many men are paying for the whole house.
Mhm.
And so therefore, it's not a matter necessarily of it's mine versus yours, but or that she's decorating, but is she decorating? Was there any stylistic preference? Did you
Mhm.
think through anything? What did you invite her into? So a lot of times it may not be necessarily bad, I guess, if the
Mhm.
guy lived in a shack, they got a house together, right? And then they like started to decorate and he was busy. But I think by and large, the goal of a man is to live an amazing life and invite somebody to be a part of that. And
Mhm.
part of that includes having some type of aesthetic preference. A lot of guys are so passive in terms of what their house looks like that they're not masculine in terms of they're not professional looking homes. They look like college dorms.
Yeah, I was gonna say most women are who, if they're listening,
Yeah.
would say, yeah.
Actually, no, they're not. I looked at our statistics.
Yeah.
Just tell you, 100% of our audience was
Well,
men.
the fact is, like, when they find a woman and their apartment looks like it did when they were teenagers.
And what are they
right?
looking for? Their mom.
Right.
Like,
so
okay,
it's the woman that
yeah,
comes
you're
in,
going to decorate it.
right? Yeah, you're gonna set up
Yeah.
a nice, beautiful home, and
Without thinking through, like, what is aesthetically pleasing and what would I want to like cities. You go to Europe, cities were built intentionally to be lasting, have longevity, have aesthetic, looks to them. And so America, we don't do that.
No, we don't.
We don't.
Everything is be thrown
Yeah.
away tomorrow.
Yeah. So
Church is built out of pole barns.
yeah.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think we take the same concept that, hey, we got our man caves, the church is mom's, and let mom do what she wants.
Yeah.
yeah.
And but again, like, how much do you fight over the actual building? The
right.
church is the people, so, but at the same time, who are you fighting with? Who's in, the fact that there has to be a fight would mean, like, what wars have already been lost now that we have to fight with the women's club in order to say, like, hey, no, we have to have an aesthetically mature looking church, So,
Well, okay, so because of your background in marketing and whatnot, I remember a while back having a conversation with you about logos and,
yeah.
because there is a way within logos and presentation of marketing to obviously key in on the masculine side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm imagining, and I don't know this to be true, and I'm asking a question, is more of the marketing today marketed towards women? And if so, like, what does masculine marketing look like? Because that kind of shows where I guess that would show kind of where our culture is too.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I forget what corporation recently did a study, but they did a study that talked about marketing in 20 years and how they need to ramp up the products that they sell to specifically target women that will be within the next 10 years between the ages of 20 and 45, who well over half will be single and unmarried with no children. So they did all of the data. This was for them to talk to their investors and go, what do we begin to ramp up in terms of products to sell? And they decided the single and childless woman is going to be the most dominant force that's going to take away most of the capital in terms of being the ones to position their products to.
Really?
So that's happening.
They're already aiming at that.
They've already looked ahead,
those
and that
people.
they're shifting their focus over the next 10 years.
Wow. I mean, you think, like, I mean, I was married young. Corey and I were 22 and 23. And I look at it and go, man, this is a blessing. Like, now that we're in our 40s, 45 and 44, it's like, man, it's been great. We got married young. I think that's what's missing, though, is that the culture's like, hey, I can wait till I'm 40 to get married now. I can enjoy my life until I'm 40, and then I can have kids. Like, no, God will shut your womb.
Yeah.
Like, nobody ever talks about that. Like, we just got to go to the doctor.
Yeah, it's not
no, God can shut the womb. And it's not going to open again.
Yep.
And
you're statistically after like 35, the probability of pregnancies rapidly declines. Not only that, the eggs that are left in a woman are 80% of the most probable and healthy ones have been diminished.
Yeah.
So now there's a 30% remaining chance of the eggs that are not chance, but 30%. The 30% remaining eggs have some deficiencies in them. So, I heard an interview recently where a guy was talking about his doctor. His doctor was 35 years old, childless, and he said, "Well, what are you gonna, when are you gonna start thinking about children?" She said, "Well, I've got at least 8 years to think about this."
How old is he?
35.
Wow.
35. I mean, he said 8 years, and she said she wanted 2 children at least, and he was blown away. And he didn't say anything, but he's like, it took everything I had not to like gasp.
Yeah.
He's like, first of all, you've got at least 4 years of pregnancy there.
Yeah.
You got 9 months, and then you got to take a
if
look.
you get pregnant.
Yeah,
when you want.
if you get
Right.
pregnant. So you got 9 months, and then you got a period where you're not pregnant, and then you got another 9 months of pregnancy. Well, when are you going to meet each other? When are you going to then get engaged? She's
not even married yet?
Not
No,
even married.
it's not married,
When are you
right,
gonna
that's
get?
single.
When are you? So like 8 years quickly becomes like, no, you literally have weeks,
Yeah.
or it's not happening.
Wow.
So
Yeah, for me, when I hear about these conversations or I think about that, it comes down to value. It's like, what do you really value? Like
Yeah.
your singleness, your time alone,
Yeah.
you enjoying life. That's more valuable than starting a family and having children.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, for some people it is.
Well, it
Right,
is
but being on
for
the other
temporarily.
Yeah, there's something
But
that kicks
there's
in.
a
but
there's
they're
a
not.
there's a big payoff that they don't realize. Not payoff, but there's a big trade-off.
Hmm.
You know, because they're giving away their most fertile years,
You know,
where a woman's value is in her purity, right?
Mhm.
So like across all cultures, across all time, your purity is
Mhm.
your
Yeah.
beauty is the number one two things that give you value in a society, whether you like it or not. And for
Mhm.
men, women, we're not born with value. We have to create it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so women have a very short window of opportunity. So Kevin Samuels did this thing, really important. He said, who do you think has the most viable romantic relationship options? A 20-year-old female or 20-year-old male? Female, right?
Yeah. it's
25-year-old male, 25-year-old female. Female still. 30-year-old male, 30-year-old female. Who has
Now you're into the
now 35-year-old male, 35-year-old female.
same thing.
If I keep going in 5-year increments, a woman will never pass a guy's viable romantic relationships ever again.
You know, that makes me wonder because you think of I always think of like celebrities. When you look
Yeah.
at celebrity marriages,
Yeah.
like this, you look like this 65-year-old man married a 24-year-old.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
And you look at that and you
he's
go,
always with
right,
the
but you look
20
at that and you go,
Yeah,
what is it? But flip that around.
right.
Would a 25-year-old male marry a 64-year-old female? I mean, even all of us sitting here are like, what?
Right.
That would never happen.
Right,
But it does show with age,
right.
men are.
Yeah,
are-
it takes us
yeah.
longer
Mhm.
to get to our market value,
Mhm.
but we sustain it for the
Yeah.
majority of the rest of our life.
Hmm.
A woman gets there quicker, but it fizzles out like 25,
Yeah.
and her options begin to drop successfully year after year.
Yeah, dude, it blew my mind the other day. We're decided because instead of bouncing on the Bible, we're like, let's just go through the whole thing. Like, so we always know where we're at. So we're in Genesis, and it just I totally forgot. It floored me that after Sarah died, Abraham
Yeah.
remarried
And had
and
kids.
had a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, what,
I'm like,
not-
if he had kids, then they had to have been younger than he
was
was.
it 100 years old or
Right.
something?
Sarah, it was a
Right?
miracle that she had one.
Were you
Right.
like 100 years old at that time or
Yeah.
something? 110,
Right.
something around there?
Right.
That's wild,
Which,
isn't it?
I mean, that
It's
still
crazy.
happens.
Right, right.
You know, still happens.
Well, I think EZ, who preached at the One Life for Life banquet a couple years ago, his
Mhm.
dad, like EZ is, I think, right around my age, your age, 45 to 47
Oh, yeah,
age.
easy, yep.
His dad's like 110.
Yeah.
Right.
When I heard
Wow.
that, I was like, wait a minute, was he adopted? No, he looks just like his dad. His dad would have had him when he was like 70 years old.
Wow.
I'm like, whoa.
Wow. Yeah.
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 That's nuts.
Yeah.
So let's flip this around now. Okay. So we've kind of here's
Well, just throw this
yeah.
out there too, because we mentioned you brought the church up.
yeah.
It's more than just how it looks. There's the music,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? There's the social interaction. There's
Yeah.
so much of it
Yeah.
that is just geared toward.
We're not thinking of it with the filter of some men that are working very hard,
Yep.
that have their life together,
Mm.
that they let's say they earn the amount of money they want to earn, they're taking care of their fitness, all the things that give them value, and let's say takes them to the top 10%, which doesn't take much nowadays because a lot of men have acquiesced to a lazy lifestyle.
Well, real quick, what do you
Yeah.
mean by top 10%?
So
What do you
top
mean?
10% meaning high meaning, you know, so women, when they define high value,
Yeah.
it's typically the guy has to be at least 6 feet, make 6 figures, have 6-pack abs. So
So not
like
not under 6 foot, 6-pack of beer. And,
right.
Okay.
Now but
Hey.
yeah. So let's now it doesn't necessarily, the problem there is if you've ever looked at like the female delusion calculator.
Never heard
Okay.
of
Oh,
it.
that
So-
sounds awesome.
Okay. So when you put in like, let's just say
Everybody who's watching this right now is
Yeah,
googling that.
yeah,
thing.
yeah. So let's say you put in like he's got to be at least 5'10", and he's got to make over $100,000 a year. You're probably at 2% of American men are in that 2%. Just on those two stats, you go 6 foot, you're less than 1%. So you have a lot of women who are looking for their high value man, and typically what happens from a societal perspective is the top 10% are the ones that are going on dates, having relationships with most of the women. Well, I mean, at this point, I think it's like 3 out of 5 men, 3 out of 6, it's 3 out of 5 or 3 out of 6 men are entering into their late 20s that have never had an intimate relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they've never been married. They've never I mean, most of them haven't gone on dates.
We're not saying
Yeah.
too that men
Not encouraging that.
right?
Yeah,
not
yeah,
encouraging
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Like that's not the biblical way, but that's
so
just
when
reality of
when I
society.
say high, when you think of high value man, top 10% man, you think today's terms. You would think a guy who has the freedom and capabilities to live the life that he wants.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't need. He's not walking in broken and needy and going, "Oh, I'm so sad." He's going, "No, I'm here because I love God, and I'm here to talk to other men." But when you walk into most churches, it's like, ugh, like this is all like geared toward the bottom half, not from a spiritual perspective bottom half, but it's only geared toward the broken,
Mhm.
or only geared toward feminine characteristics, to your point. So let's just go back a couple hundred years ago. Let's think of men that were on the battlefield.
Mhm.
They had to kill people, and now they're walking into the church. They just walked out. They killed a bunch of people. Then they had to like start a farm, and they're living a hard life. And then they're coming in. Now, are you going to shame them for not coming to the banquet? And
Right,
you know what
right.
they're going to do? They're not going to come back.
Yep.
Because they're going to say, I didn't come here to be shamed because of your banquet.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
I had a 4-year-old, not me personally, but I had a 4-year-old die in my arms
Mhm.
with pneumonia. My wife died because of this. And our farm is going under. And now you want to shame me because I didn't go to a banquet. The only reason we can shame men now is because the men we're targeting are the weak men.
The weak man.
The strong men are going to go, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. You go. You shame each other. I got to live
I
life.
got work to do.
Yeah, because the strong biblical man says the typical man is going to say, I have a job,
Yeah.
I serve my family,
Yeah.
I feed my family, I take care of the home,
Yeah.
I make sure all this stuff
I
is
love
handled.
I
And
hang out.
sometimes
I
get
love
home,
my friends. My
exactly. I
Yeah.
love that time, and I want to get home sometimes and just relax and be with my family, and like breaking the bonds of like, no, but the Christian way is you're at church on Sunday night, Wednesday, every single
Yeah.
men's breakfast every other week, and you're doing all these things, but the biblical man, that's not a biblical man. The biblical man falls to, I love my family, I do what God has given me to do, I provide for my family,
Yeah.
and I train them in the fear and the admonition of the Lord.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because beyond that,
Carry
there's
the
not a
sense
lot.
of guilt
Yeah.
Right.
all the time.
Yeah.
They're not doing enough
Yeah.
or at all the things.
Yeah.
Because that's the spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's just not spiritual. It's just what? It's worldly, carnal.
Well,
you
it
know,
quickly
but-
goes from an invitation to like a requirement, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to envision these guys coming in like hands blistered. The way that men that work hard today look different, so it's not as easy to detect.
Mhm.
So the pressure is off because we all kind of look the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But imagine you got men they've got cuts on their arms and faces, and like they're just grubbed out, and you have a whole sanctuary full of them. Go ahead and try to guilt them for not coming to the banquet.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're
But
nope.
because they look, so what happens is because they look like you, they hear the guilt, they know that they're working hard, and they don't come back.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So then you go, well, we're losing the men.
Yeah.
No, you're irrelevant to them
Yeah, you're not in their sphere of
Yeah.
influence anyway.
because they're out doing things. But the men that are left, you can just beat because they're like, you're right.
Yeah,
I
they're not
suck.
going away.
I'm weak. I'm blah.
I always loved in Amos, when you have Amos is called to be a prophet. I love the story of him because he comes to the university of sorts of the Pharisee or the Jewish leaders, and he comes in and basically says, "Hey, I'm a prophet. I was sent here." And they look at him like, "Dude, you're a sycamore farmer. What are you doing?" He's like, "I don't care. I have a message to bring." Like, he didn't give a rip what their preconceived view of him. I mean, I always pictured him walking in like my grandfather, like with bib overalls, smelling like the farm and manure, and
Right.
from working on it and doing all this stuff, and walking in them saying, "You don't deserve to be. You didn't go to our schools." And he was like, "I don't give a rip.
Right.
I have a message to bring. You're not going to deter me from that. No matter what you say, doesn't matter." And that's kind of, I mean, that's the biblical man. It's like he comes in and goes, "Oh, you're going to shame me? That's nice.
Right.
I'm going to go love my family." And obviously, we don't want to lose the men. Instead, the church needs to be a place for men to thrive.
Yeah. And, well, you look at it like this too. If you go to a restaurant and you don't like their service,
Mm-hmm.
are you typically going to get on there and complain?
Mm-mm.
You're not. What are you going to do? You're just not going to go back.
Right.
And so now today we're like, I wonder, like, where are all the good men? You know, and it's like they didn't tell you.
Right.
They so that's the vacuum that it creates.
So how do we? What is the best way within the church? I mean, obviously these are opinions, but I think there's some biblical. Where I always think of Spurgeon, who talked about John Bunyan. He said, "You prick him and he bleeds bibline."
Yeah.
Like this idea that all three of us have studied plenty and been in the scripture every day. So obviously things we're saying is you're not going to go, "Oh, chapter and verse, please." Like, no, this is a biblical teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So like, how do we? I don't want to say attract the men, because I don't think that's the goal. The church doesn't attract the men to the church. Like, what is the best way to, I guess, get men to see the value in being a part of the body?
Easy
because that's
answer.
the question.
Easy
Go
answer.
ahead. Yeah.
Become the men they want to attract.
There you go. Be the tough, rugged men who.
Because then you'll start to hang around them.
Yep.
You'll start to be. But if you look around, and the most men that you hang out with they're not doing the things that make them top tier.
Mm-hmm.
They're not pursuing growth in all these different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Before, if I know reducing things to money can be an issue, because we're all on that journey. But like,
use as an example.
But let's go this way. Let's go back in the day. If you didn't like kill animals, and your family have anything to eat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was a problem.
Yeah.
Right. So like then some other man would have to come in and try to help. So like, nowadays there are we live in a different culture where how we kill and eat looks different.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to look around you and be like, are the men that I'm surrounding myself with killing animals?
Mm-hmm.
Are they on the offense in life? Are there these main areas that they're trying to better themselves
Mm-hmm.
in? And again, the main ones I would say, spiritual aside, that obviously, because if you're in the cultural context of the church, you assume to some degree that's trying to, there's a growth attempt there, but they're trying to make more money. They're trying to be physically fit. They're trying to be more social.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're single, they're trying to be more social with how they interact with women,
Mm-hmm.
and that they can hold a conversation, and they're thinking through some of that as well. And so, but the easy answer is just become what
Be the
you,
man. Yeah, not like a Mark Driscoll type where you see like the abusive thing. Because I think, when we look at scripture, Jesus is the ultimate example of what a man should be.
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
He was willing to sacrifice himself for his people. Like, that in itself is what men should be. Like I actually got on my phone.
He's the ultimate toxic masculinity.
He is. But I took a screenshot of this because it really was like, that's right on. It was from Twitter, but it said, "Question for men. My mom, who has been married to my dad for over 30 years, just found out that my dad constantly scans for, assesses, and plans for possible threats. Menfolk, do you do this?" That was the question. And I thought to myself, when I heard that, I'm like, I do that. I'm always doing that. I'm always like, where should I place guns in the house? Where should I, who's walking by the front door? Who's knocking? Like, my brain is always going there. And I thought it's a very masculine, like, that's what men do. But nowadays,
I've instructed guys, hey, when you take a girl on the date, or my daughters, here's the first rule if you know that you shouldn't date this guy. His back is to the door.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If I go on a date and I invite a girl, I'm facing the door.
Yep. Yep. I actually like to sit in corners because I have a full view of everything going on around.
Yeah.
My wife can face everything else, and
I know.
So I'm always like, in my head, I'm like, where's the exits?
Yeah. Right.
What's the quickest line from here to there?
Yep.
How do I get them out of harm's way?
Yeah.
But it shows that the ability for men to be like that, like Christ, because Christ was that one who knew what was happening, knew how to predict it. You look at, and Christ also had the ability to be tough. Like, he would, people like Jesus, gentle Jesus, meek and mild. No,
Yeah.
Like he,
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
there was times he was
As
he
a
was gentle.
baby.
Well, there was times but he
Yeah.
did it perfectly. Like he
Yeah,
flipped
yeah.
tables
No,
at
yeah.
one point, made a whip,
Yeah.
and started whipping people in the temple. Like
Yeah.
they're not gentle, Jesus.
Rose
But
a
then-
child.
But then, like
gently
we were reading our
through-
men's Bible study a couple weeks ago, was you had the woman who came and she had this discharge of blood, and she just touched the hem of Christ's
Right.
robe, and he was healed. And he immediately goes to her and says, "Woman, your sins are forgiven. Like your
Right.
faith has made you well."
Right.
Like there was a tender moment between him and somebody,
Right.
but then the next moment he's flipping tables and making whips.
right.
Like he was the
He knows who to
ultimate
be
tough
tender
guy.
to.
Yeah,
And the main characteristic there, I think, is taking action.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Men of
Like he
action.
was busy
Mhm.
doing things, and
Yeah.
that's why, like, if somebody like let's say we're watching him feed 5,000 people to the fish and the bread, and you're not going to see some guy raise his hands and be like, "You missed the banquet, yesterday."
Yeah.
Like, why did you miss the banquet? Like they saw his actions and his contributions to the world,
Mhm.
if you will, take precedence over trying to guilt him or shame him,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
over unnecessary things that, so the point is, you would never do that because you would know, like, if, not that we're Jesus, but you would know that, like, if he didn't come to the group thing, you're not going to be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus, you suck.
we made this.
Are you?
We sent out the flyer, bro."
Yeah, come on.
Right?
You're
So,
not
like,
going to grow if you're not.
yeah. So, like, there are men out there that are taking very seriously how to level up their life, and it's consuming them. And if we're not aware of that fact, they'll leave, and you won't
Yeah.
know.
Mhm.
You just won't know.
Yeah, I remember my one daughter, she has a boyfriend, and the first time I met him, I shook his hand, and a young man shook my hand back. It was a good, strong shake.
Yeah.
I looked at him and I said, "Listen, when you're with my daughter, which they're never alone, they usually
Yeah.
hang out at his house, but his parents are there and stuff." But I remember looking at him like, when you understand, when you're with my daughter and I'm not with her, because I'm her protector, I expect you to lay down your life for her. This kid looked at me and goes, "Sir, I have a 2 or 3 degree black belt in karate. I'll take care of your daughter." I said, "That's a good answer, son."
That is a good
And
answer.
I told Abby, I was like, so because they'll go for walks periodically, and I watch them on the app.
Yeah,
I got an
yeah.
app I can watch where they're going and stuff.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I said, when you guys walk, where's he at and where are you at? She goes, "He's always on the roadside."
Yeah, yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
that's a good boy.
Yeah.
That's a good boy who will be a great man.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's what I want
Yeah.
for my daughter. And I go, that's the kind of masculine values that we need in men today. Like those little things like that may not to
Yeah.
women don't make a difference.
No, it's so funny. I saw a meme that was like, a wife was like, talking to her friend, and she's like, "Yeah, we went out for tacos. It was nice." And the husband, like, they show his head, and he's like, "Well, I calculated the distance. I made
Yeah.
sure that guy wasn't trying to,
Yeah.
and he's like this and this and like all this like math stuff." And he's like, "Yeah, we went out for tacos," but like you won't see the inside of a man's brain.
Have you seen the
Not
Roman
to
Empire? That Roman Empire trend going around
No.
TikTok? Oh, you haven't?
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Go ahead.
Well, women I don't know who stumbled upon it, but they asked their husbands, "Hey, honey, how often do you think of the Roman Empire?" And almost 9 out of 10 men that are asked, they say,
Daily
"I don't
or
know,
something.
maybe once a day, 3 times a week." And these women are floored. They're like,
Yeah.
"What?" They're like, "We haven't thought about this in
Right.
school since history
Right.
class."
Right.
Right? And so now there's all these theories coming out. Like, why do men think about the Roman Empire?
That's so funny.
Right? Do they have this inner desire to conquer?
Right.
And some are like, "No, I think America's going that way." And they all have their own ideas.
Well,
right?
Elon Musk he said, he posted a meme and it said, "We're just witnessing the fall of Rome just with memes."
Yes, yeah.
With memes.
I mean,
He does
there's a
too.
great little PDF you can find online. It's a small booklet made by I think his name was Sir Norman Glubb, I believe, Glubb. It's it's about the rise and fall of nations, and this was written in like the 40s. He took a historical view of like the Roman Empire, there's some like a Turkish Empire, all these like empires. When you think of nations are one thing,
Mhm.
a nation, there's lots of nations. An empire is somebody that controls vast quantities of the world somehow, some way.
Mm-hmm.
And he found that each of them had a lifespan just like people do. And so there was around 250 years he calculated. And he goes back and says, look at like, which blew my mind. This Turkish, I believe it was a Turkish one. I haven't read it in a long time. But this one empire in like the 400s, 80s, had so as they track this, like there's the first heroes of an empire are the military people because they're the ones that conquered. And then it becomes the politicians, and then it becomes like the pop kind of scene. And he showed that like there was this pop music scene in like the 400s in this like Islamic country that popped up, and these people would stand on the streets and they became the heroes. And then in that same place, the women were seen going, well, men are rulers, they've been rulers so long. We should have equal rights. They said, you're right. Women should have equal rights in that sense, and you guys should rule too. So the women become the judges. So now they're the rulers, right? And what's crazy is within 10 years of that happening, the nation fell. And the women who were all, it's kind of like modern day feminism, like men bad, were 10 years later crying out for the men to protect them because they were being raped and pillaged and all this stuff in the streets.
Because society just fell apart.
Because
the protectors and providers have just...
Congratulations. How do you feel?
I gotta pee.
I believe he said he had to go pee.
So when we think of offensive, we can look at this broadly and go, okay, culturally, how do we... Reality is 99.999% of guys are not going to affect the culture individually. Like, this is not going to happen. Like, we're not going to be politicians. We're not going to be famous. We're not going to have that influence outside of like our immediate influence, right? We have our friends, we have our family, our church. Like, those are people we can affect. So I'm your average guy. Let's say I work construction. I'm married. I've got 4 kids. If you don't have 4 kids, have 4 kids. Or more. I do encourage that, but I always encourage lots of kids. Garrett, how many kids you got?
100.
102.
Yeah,
102, right?
Yeah,
102.
yeah.
He's got a lot of kids. I got a lot of kids. Nathan's got a few kids. Nathan's the small one with 3, which is large for today's standard. But like your average guy, like what would you encourage that guy? Like, hey man, here's what you need to do. Like we've said, pastors need to be that guy. But that other guy's going like, man, I don't know. I don't know if I'm doing it right. Like, I don't know if what I'm doing, or, hey, I am that weak man. I recognize that. How do I get out of that to become that man? How would you, so like I said, I have an initial thought on this, and my initial thought is simply this, and it's a really simple one. If you're not married, get married. Easy enough. Don't wait till you're new.
I might have a caveat.
That's okay. I'll just start with mine, and then we'll go to that.
Yeah.
I'll throw my idea out there, and then we'll go from there. So get married. Have lots of kids. That's number one. That's a way as men that you can go on the offensive, because that's something culture doesn't do. And then take those kids you have, and like Scripture says, they're like an arrow to be shot out, basically. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full, and we can think of that arrow shooting out. Train them to know the Lord. Train them to do what you have done, and let them go. And then just love your family and do what's right. That's the basic. So I'll leave it there and go. You have the caveat to that, so go.
Yeah. So 2 caveats. One is marriage. Depending on, if we're defining it primarily by government, the government sanctioned contractual agreement, which is mainly a business agreement, which the church by and large has adopted as okay. So like, what do we mean there? B would be most women today aren't worthy to be married to.
Okay, so I will go to the marriage.
I'll say and men, but we always say and men.
I would
exactly.
So
it just got me thinking, like the guy who we're talking, or you started describing. The adolescent, like, porn addicted. Getting married, would that just solve that?
Or let's go the guy I'm talking about who's got his stuff together.
The other guy.
He's got his group of friends. He's professional, has good money. Can he find a woman that doesn't have, statistically every woman that has at least 5 bodies, meaning she's had 5 sexual partners, the decrease in the probability of marriage lasting, regardless how we try to Christianize it. I have so many caveats to go down here that I don't know if we'll have time, but
well, we got till tomorrow.
And this isn't.
I gotta be at work tomorrow at 8 a.m. So that's what you got.
We should be able to make it. Their marital satisfaction drops so significantly that the probability of that marriage lasting is just so small. And people will say, well, what about men? Not the same. Men and women aren't the same now, I'm not actually saying that men need to go out and have a bunch of sexual
No,
partners.
do not do that. Right?
That's not what I'm saying.
at all. Right.
That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that culturally, a lot of women have now started to behave like. Okay, so the last time I was
Behave
like men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
you said
not-
women have
yeah,
begun,
yeah,
culturally
yeah,
begin
yeah.
to behave.
Yeah. No.
I had to finish
Yeah.
that sentence for you there.
Yeah, so
Because that answer would be on you if somebody gets mad at that one. I'm just doing he'll finish that.
Yeah. So I mean, get married. It's tough because of how social media, going back to women, attention to women is like porn to men, and how a woman who's this like Midwest country girl who loves Jesus, who can now get invited to yachts in Miami because she posted some questionably attractive pictures on Instagram, that used to not be possible. Her selection was confined to a 50-mile radius. And so now women have the attention at their disposal anytime they're upset or mad or want to convey something or want, to feel good about themselves. They now have that accessibility in a way that they never have before. And so therefore, just getting married requires a lot of caveats to how do you find a good wife today.
It does, but on the other side of that, there are.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, to your point, getting married is
if you're in the church, like, realistically, it shouldn't be that difficult. It is.
It is.
Unfortunately, it is. And I have a
shouldn't.
23-year-old who would love to be married right now, and just, it's not happening. Like, he's tried to find women that, it's just not happening, unfortunately, and I do get that fully because I really want for him to be married. But I do think, like, at the base thing is we need to fight back by getting married. But
to your point, though, a lot of the men aren't marriage material either.
I agree.
I'm not saying one or the other.
But I would say you don't have to have everything put together before you get married either. And
Right,
I
yeah,
say
I
that
think
because
that's I agree with that. I just think that might be a different.
because you don't because you don't have to have the great job. You don't have to because I can't say biblically men need to make X amount of dollars a year because.
But they should. To me, they should be on their way. Their passion should be, how do I become the best version of myself possible? But if they're kind of passive, lazy, they don't take care of the way they look. They're sloppy, and then they're like, well, hey, she should just like me for who I am. I think women are facing some of the same issues because we're going, because women want to be with somebody who's on his way to somewhere, has a passion for something. This goes back to the leadership principles. Like they're pursuing a greater goal that a woman can then come alongside of and not be so much pressure could be put on a woman to be like, okay, this guy, his life actually kind of sucks. It's boring. It's kind of lame. He's not trying to do anything. And then he's going to go get married and she's now the center and now she feels all the pressure.
Right.
Like I'm the meaning of his life.
Yeah.
Versus the guy who's like, I'm out there, I'm killing it, I'm moving forward, I'm trying to, make more money, love more, people, make a bigger impact, be more spiritual, intact with my church culture, and she's coming alongside that. Now that's attractive, but she can't. This goes back to a quote from an author that maybe I shouldn't quote, but I will. Rollo Tomasi. A genuine desire cannot be negotiated. At best, you get obligated obedience. So, in other words, you can't negotiate genuine desire. It's either there or it isn't. And so a lot of the way the church says it, y'all should get married. I've seen this play out so much. But if the guy doesn't live a genuine, desirable life, just getting married, all you're going to get is this woman who's obligated to go, okay, I'm stuck with him forever, even though there's no desire.
So by doing that, she's not able to rest into her feminine nature.
Boom. Yep.
Right? She has to now take the
Become
reins
more
of their
masculine.
life.
Yep. Because now she's the one making their life.
Right. And so contrary to every single Disney movie.
Yep.
Women don't want
Which
to
were
be
written by men.
right. They don't want to be the center of your universe.
No.
Right? They don't
Right.
want to be the one thing that you're living for.
Men live. Women live opportunistically, right? Men live idealistically. We're the ones who write the Disney movies. We love the Rome. We're the ones that buy the flowers, right? Like, we're the ones that do all that stuff because we like it. But women love opportunistically. They're more attracted to where they see opportunity, and they're being a part of something bigger than them. You're right. They can't rest in their femininity because often the guy who's looking around to get married has no life. But the guy who's like, I'm passionately going. It's that chasing versus attracting. Like, the moment you make that shift. Now, you guys have not been single for how long? A couple years.
23, almost 20.
Yeah.
19.
Yeah. So there's a big difference between
Yeah.
being the guy that's out there trying to chase a woman versus the guy who's trying to live a life that attracts a woman. And that's a big difference. And so I agree with you, but a lot of the pursuit to getting married is actually deviated, and it should be, to the pursuit of becoming an excellent man.
Well, yeah, and let's to put that in perspective, like those guys, like the guys that we're going to say are the weak men.
Okay.
Be a strong man before you get married, but the generality is, let's say there's a guy. I'll give you an example. There's a guy. He's got an apprenticeship. He's going to be a carpenter. Let's use that as an example. He's obviously working towards something. That doesn't mean he's going to make killing his life. It just means he's fighting for something, for a future. Like those kind of guys, like, get a good job or get a job you like, and you can see yourself doing. Because you can hit a point where you go, I don't want to go any further in this job. Look at all our grandpas. They work for General Motors. Were married for 70 years, and like their wives worked at home, and they got
I don't
like. So some of it is cultural. There's where we have to push back on. Like, culture says you have to be this, this, and this before you get married. And that's why we see people getting married older. You have to have a good career. You have to make X amount of dollars. You're going to have X house, have X car. Like, none of that is biblical. The biblical standard is a husband provides, a wife is the helper for the husband. They have a family, and they have kids. And those kids do the same thing, and this replicates. I mean, that's why Islam is winning in Europe, because they are doing that. The husbands work, the women stay home. They have lots of kids. They pass on that faith. And it's a
They
blasphemous.
also take friendships very seriously.
Right, but it's a blasphemous cult that is obscene to Christ. Like, it's obscene what it does, and Christ hates it. Like, but they're winning because they do that, and we as Christians have capitulated to societal norms and allowed that to be our guiding standard for what biblical standard is.
Yeah, but some of the differences. Somebody had said recently, a man has to work 5 times as hard to get a woman that's less than half the quality of his grandma.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, your grandmas didn't have 10 bodies.
No, right.
Definitely not 30 bodies.
Right.
Right? So, like, the difference now, though, is, like, the competitive nature of society requires you to have to level up your game. It's reality.
But in the church, we should not see women with 30 bodies. We should not see women with 5 bodies. We should
I agree.
should see women that are pure, and on top of that, men who are likewise. You know, and if that's not happening, we've failed as a church to teach the Bible. No, straight back. Not the church. The family has failed to show that is the way to go. Like, it's the family's fault, because we've relegated discipleship to the church when discipleship is done best in the home, period.
Yeah.
It is a biblical standard. Again, it's a biblical way.
I see. I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing quality of life.
Let me go.
Quality of life,
too.
not verses, but there's quality of life, and then there's quality of the man.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, if you go back 200 years, or you go to some small town, right, you can find the type of man that we're discussing.
Yeah.
Right. Who's strong, hardworking, focused, nose to the
Yeah.
grind,
Yeah.
right? A protector, a provider.
Yeah.
He's not flashy. He doesn't have $1 million, but
Mhm.
he's that quality of man
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
a woman looks for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so he may not be interested in leveling up according to, say, the type of men in LA,
Right.
right?
Right.
But he is
Those
in the
aren't
sense
men.
of doing his duty, right?
Yeah.
Those men are like,
Yeah.
Right, but he is in the sense of the quality of duty,
Yeah.
right? What he brings, and so like obviously they're different. But going back to like the marriages, I don't know. You didn't really say marriage was a solution, but it was a step.
no, it's a step though. It is
Right.
definitely what I mean. Go if you look scripturally, like what we've been taught right from the beginning is God made a woman for Adam, and I believe if that Eve actually means out of man or something like that. It's like out of me. Kind of. Don't quote me on that. But this idea that like, and I think Jim Elliot, the book his wife wrote. It's his biography after he passed. But one of the things, and I've taught this to all my kids, and I always think it's good. Like he was, I don't know if you know Jim Elliot's story. It's a great book. If you really, it's really every young man should read that book because he was devoted to the Lord. But in his mindset through college was, I'm going to wrestle because I'm going to be a missionary, and I've got to be able to get my body in shape to be a missionary, right? Well, he meets Elizabeth Elliot, and they're friends, and he says to her, "Look, I'm not looking for a wife. I'm going to be a missionary. I don't want to bring a woman into that." And the Lord obviously changed that because he got married, and it was a blessing because his wife went into the Auca, I think it's the Auca people, whatever they're called, and the gospel was preached after his death. But anyways, one thing he said that has always struck me, he said, men of his day, this is written in the 40s, I believe, were like dogs. They were out hunting for a woman. Like they were treating like, I've got to find that woman. And he said, well, what Scripture says is, and there's some caveat to it, but I think he nails something. He said, when God made Adam, he then created Eve. So the man shouldn't be like a dog who goes out hunting for the woman. Rather, he seeks the Lord. He loves the Lord. He does what he would require and lets the Lord provide that woman. So it's like God will put that woman in your place. Who is that woman for you? And it's the best marriage because the guy has devoted himself to Christ, to what Christ would have him to do, which that is like working hard. It's it's it's
becoming
doing
the
that.
most
Being
responsible,
exactly,
best version.
and God will provide that woman,
Yeah.
and so therefore that wedding will flourish.
Yeah.
And I always thought that's
Yeah.
good advice for young
Yeah.
men.
Yeah.
Like I've taught all my young boys that, and my
Yeah.
older boys that.
I mean, so like you'll hear today too, like a lot of guys will be like, "Oh man, my wife really married up," and I don't think they realize, first of all, how offensive that must be to the woman, that she diminished herself by marrying him, and it's all like celebrated, like, "Oh man, I'm such a piece of crap," and my wife, I definitely, and it's like, well, that's too bad. She should have maybe held out because maybe she could have found a winner.
yeah, because if you want to be honest with it, it's like we were both a piece of crap. I mean, you
Yeah.
consider it with,
It's that false
in
humility.
regard to
Yeah.
who we are in Christ. Like, yeah, we were both wicked
Sure.
sinners.
Yeah.
Hey Gary,
Yeah.
so I've heard you say a couple times. You just kind of threw out there, men's friends
Yeah.
or having friends.
Yeah.
Explain like
That's
the
another
importance of
component.
that and the
It's
components.
and here's the challenge here is as you begin to level up your life, that friend group becomes smaller, and you have to become more intentional because you can outgrow some of the people that and it's not a monetary thing, it's a passion thing. And so this this kind of goes back too to like how some guys after they get married they just kind of like, all right, I'm gonna just sit back and relax now, and
or they have women that don't want them going out with their friends anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, nope,
Yeah.
you're mine. You stay in your little
Yeah.
man cave.
Yeah.
Look, I
We'll
want to
take
control
care of
you.
Yeah, and there are
But
some
they
little
do.
subtleties.
They walk away
that-
from their
Yeah,
friendships.
they do, and they begin to create the world around their wife.
Mm-hmm.
And absence makes the heart grow fonder. There is some truth to that, to where like if a man is out like creating a life, like killing, in this case, earning or whatever it might be, networking or whatever it might be, there's a beauty to that, like he's got a life and he doesn't just like, and she's coming alongside of that, and it's a different context when you're bringing this woman into your world versus you going into hers. right? And so there's a dynamics
That's a good
there
follow-up
that needs
question
to,
to that.
that needs to be in place.
Yeah. So again, I think that we can assume that, I mean, given the fact that you have the right friends, or you surround yourself with men that you want to be like,
Yeah.
right? You're
Yeah.
not, your woman is your main influence.
Right.
Men who you want to be like is your main
Right.
influence.
Which
That's
means
important.
that's good because you have to be intentional in that.
Yeah.
Because typically that doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's being observant in terms of what quality of a man that you want to be around, and figuring out how to interact with him in a way to where you're, because there are some people that are like, I just want to hang out with you, but they don't want to contribute.
Right. Right.
And the higher you kind of go up in terms of maybe not social status, but just like overall growth, people think differently. And the way they think differently is they think abundantly. And they think their mindset is, how do I add value to this guy who just entered? And that's all they care about. They're just, how do I shower this guy with value? Where is he? It's like, where does he need help?
Yeah.
What can I do? And if that person can't add value to the group, then they're just there to kind of like suck the energy out, but not add value. They're not thinking on that same line, and eventually they just kind of walk in a
Okay.
different line.
So as we just begin to probably
Yeah.
land this thing,
Yeah.
Let's talk about practical things.
Yeah.
So I'm picturing the man who, he's there, right? Maybe he's listening to this right now, and he's like, "That's me, right? I have I have no friends barely. I'm always by myself. They've inadvertently, under the idea of I just serve my wife, it's just that's his whole world. But he's starting to feel the effects of just diminishing, and he feels it no direction. Right? Like where do I go? How do I become? What's my steps? Right.
I love
So
that.
let's with whatever you're going to add to,
Yep.
like let's begin to talk about just practical steps. Like what's the first thing he has to do?
Well, I'll start actually with some of that answer because because I was totally thinking about it as we're going, which falls to Titus. It says, older women, likewise, are to be reverent in behavior, not slanderers, slaves to much wine. They are to teach what is good, and so train the young women to love their husbands and children, right? To be self-controlled, pure. So here's the older women training the younger women. Likewise, he says to the younger men, be self-controlled, show yourself in all respect to models of good works, and in your teaching show integrity, dignity, and sound speech, so that an opponent may not be put to shame. But the idea of this passage is the older people in the church are to train the younger people. So what that means, if you're a younger man and you're like, hey, what direction do I go? You find an older man to be your friend.
Here's the problem.
Good.
A lot of the men and women, especially, in today's culture,
Yep.
and you'll see this play out in annoying bickering over carpets and stuff like that. The cliche.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The women act like men.
Oh yeah.
So, and they degrade their husbands, or they're not, and then the men have acquiesced to the women. So it's hard. Again, you have to know what qualities to look for. This
That's
goes
what I'm
back to
getting
the
at.
marriage.
Yeah, you're getting to the
Because
quality. Yep.
contextually across the board, you have reverse roles of older generations
Yep.
that can't really contribute. Not from a wisdom perspective, they have, but from a lot of the times how the roles should have been. They have probably more to contribute than
Today.
Today.
Yes, right.
but
But
a lot of
on
times
that
the
end,
roles are reversed.
I would get into like the older men, and we are all. I mean, the three of us are those older men.
Don't say that too loud.
We are because like in this time.
Mature. I like to aged.
Hey, I'm older. I'm good with it. I'm
No,
totally
I'm
good
just
with it.
kidding. I'm okay.
No, I think you're right though. I mean, as far as steps go,
Yeah.
what I heard is
Step one: find a guy,
find
find an older
a
man.
man
Yep.
that is already doing right what you want to be doing.
Don't spend all your time with people the same age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you're older, find younger men because there is some vitality in them.
Yeah.
Like they bring something to the table for us older guys. Like
Yeah.
But to
Absolutely.
Gary's point, the assumption is they're older.
Right.
They may not be.
but find
they
those
may
men. Like
be, they
right.
may be your same age yet, way levels above
Right,
you.
and look
Yeah.
look, but
Yeah.
it takes work. It's like
It does.
like your
Yeah.
job took time to get into that career and build
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
It may take time to find the guy. Like, man, that's the guy. I see how he's walking.
Yeah.
I see how he is with his wife. I see all this stuff in
Yeah.
him. Like I remember myself. I had a guy, older guy who was older than my parents. When I was a young man, we clicked.
Yeah.
And I spent so much time with him and learned from him and watched him. And
Yeah.
he went to be with the Lord a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But I look at it like, man, what a blessing of a time that was for me to be
Yep.
shaped
Yep.
by a guy who was like, I'm fervently following Christ and I'm
Yeah.
leading my family.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And it was a blessing. So that would be my first encouragement on my end to just say,
Yeah.
hey, if you're younger, it's not wrong to have friends the same age as you. It's not wrong.
Yeah.
But don't bank on that. Like, take some
Yeah.
time, especially if you're not married. Like, you have more time,
Right.
find those guys and find time you can cut in with them.
And to be honest, this isn't really. It's there's no age in which this can start to take place. And I think the first place you want to identify is where do you suck at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like where do you know right
Yeah.
now? Like let's say you're 60 pounds overweight, and you know you're not eating right, and you know you haven't got a routine in the gym. Start there. Like I always say, like that's going to be the biggest payoff. Assuming assuming that you've got you're in communication with your pastor and but like start there, and then how you start there is find the fittest person that you know that you can tell goes to the gym has already invested a bunch of time, energy, and effort into learning macronutrients, micronutrients, high density fruits, and whatever it is that you're looking for, and ask them if that they can give you some feedback. And they've already taken 10 years of their life to learn how to be more physically fit. For me, it doesn't have to be somebody in the church, depending on what area you're looking for. So, like,
Right.
I looked for the fittest guy in the gym, and I said, hey, could you give me some advice? And for the past year and a half, I've worked with this guy, and he's a great guy. And I could tell that he invested at least 10 years in learning everything that now I don't have to learn.
Yeah.
Because I can learn in a second because he's
You
there.
have to research. You just learn it.
Yeah. And so like fashion, I think I told you about this. I looked, I frequent some coffee shops. There's a guy that everybody always commented on the way he dressed. And I said, hey, how do you do, like, where do you go? What do you do? How do you think through, like, what sports jacket, business casual versus this? And immediately he's like, I'll take you to my tailor. I'll take you to where I get the best deal. Let me just show you what's going, and in one weekend, I had the connections that I needed to create a professional wardrobe versus researching, and I made a connection, fellowship of a high value guy or a high value fitness guy. These are two connections that are lifelong connections now. So identify where you are struggling the worst in, and then find somebody who's already won that battle, and you'll short circuit your growth pattern.
Sure.
And you do that to everything.
And I really think that's the principle,
Yeah.
right? Is find someone who is not necessarily older, but just mature. Like they've had that history, they had that experience,
Yeah.
right? That's the goal, is to
Yep.
mature,
Yep.
Yeah.
right? That's the principle.
And if they tell you they're
Because-
mature, they're not.
Yeah,
That's why I throw it
because
out
we
there.
know there's
Yeah,
plenty
yeah.
of older men who are not,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
they have actually just shrunk down to what we're
Yeah.
trying to define
Yeah,
here.
it's not going to be as easy as going to a gym, finding the most good-looking
Yeah,
guy,
yeah.
like strength guy, and go, yeah, that's the guy. Sometimes it's going to take effort. Like, hey, you're in a church, and you want to find the guy that's like, man, he's just walking with the Lord, and I want that. It's going to take time of.
Working
So
hard.
this is now developing friendships. So now you can start to
Yeah.
see where they're really at. Because as you
Yeah.
develop
You
friendships,
just don't show up the next day fit.
Right.
No.
If you found that guy, like
You
he's
have
like,
to
yeah,
commit
I'll help
to
you
it.
out. It's not like boom tomorrow.
Yep.
I'm good.
Which actually speaks to the fact that you really got to identify what is it all for.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why
Yeah,
do I
what's your
want to
goal?
be fitter? Why do I want to
Yeah.
be more successful?
And I
Why
think
do
it comes down to personal responsibility.
Yeah.
God has given you this body and this life to live once. And so we haven't even talked about things like mental health and areas, deeper spiritual elements, depression, things like
Yeah,
that.
loneliness that
yeah,
men experience
yeah,
because they
like,
retreated.
Yeah, but that's all part of having a bigger reason to be doing this. Like if you don't have kids, like still this is it. Like this is what God gave you. Like I have pictured myself leaving my body and never being in my, and just seeing it lying in the casket and genuinely going, thank you. Like, dude, you suffered through some stuff and you contained my vessel through all of that, like painful things. And like when I like was pushing you to the brink of like breaking down because I was so emotional and trying to just work my way through the stuff, like thank you. Like I appreciate you, bro. You know, and like I owe it to obviously to God,
Right.
to live in the most responsible
Yeah.
way to just, and by no means, you know, there's all these areas that you're constant, you know, like when you're working on this area begins to have an issue.
Oh yeah.
Then you work on this area, then, you know, so there's a constant,
And it sounds like you're saying even to look at every area of your life
yeah,
as a gift to be responsible for.
Yeah.
yeah,
And do your
Right.
best with it.
Steward
Yeah.
of your time,
Yeah.
your money, your body, your
Yeah.
relationships. Look at all of it. And too often or too far. First, what am I looking at? I'm saying far too long. There you
Yeah,
go.
there you go. That
What
works.
am I looking at? Let me edit that.
No.
Far too long we've
We'll
had this
close up.
dichotomy. Yes, there you go. We have that dichotomy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Spiritual versus, you know, just non-spiritual, whatever. We're like, this is what really matters in life, and this is it doesn't matter.
right. When
And
it
we
all
just-
does.
Yeah, it all does.
It
Yeah.
all does.
Yeah, like the old One Life slogan was all of Christ for all of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the picture. Like Christ isn't everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he is our, he is our everything. And at the end of the day, like some people's bodies will be broken through accidents, and
Yeah.
it's like, but you know what? God has given you a gift. It's still life. Find the
Yeah.
places you can grow in,
Yes.
and fight for those. You know,
Yeah.
one doesn't mean it,
Yeah.
you know, it's just going to look different for everybody.
it
But
will.
that's
It
but
will.
the goal is like to say, okay, how can I steward it the best? And if I can steward it the best and
Yep.
do what God has commanded,
Yep.
I will die and I will be with him in glory, and I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not based. I mean, praise the Lord that our glorification, our salvation is not based on what we do with this body or what we do in this life. It's based on what Christ did. And a response to that is, I love my God and I love His law and I want to keep it.
Yeah.
Like that's the response, because I love Him
Yeah.
like a kid does. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, I guess we'll end it there.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Sounds
It's a good enough
Yeah,
spot.
yeah,
So I guess we'll close with that. We want to thank you for watching, listening, whatever you did. But we will, you know, I think I was trying to think of like what's a good way to close this. And one of my favorite.
I'm kind of listening to a part two. I
No,
don't know.
we'll get back
There's
to Gary
some
again.
silly-
I
yeah,
think
there's
we
some
will.
of those things we
We'll
need
get
talk
back to
about.
Gary again. But
Let's see how much trouble this causes. For
well, you know, it's okay. I'm good with causing trouble. I'm okay with it. Yeah, if you have any problems or any complaints, what I want you to do is write it on a piece of paper, and I want you to walk to the nearest garbage can and throw it in there, because I don't
the
really.
complaint department.
Yeah, that's our complaint department. HR will handle it readily. So, but I've been thinking about this. So this is what I came to. One of my favorite verses. We'll close you with this.
Okay.
Go eat your bread with joy, and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved what you do. Ecclesiastes. So, thanks.